Badlands, explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Mr. Vice President, I'm going off script again, I know, but I just want to personally thank you. We've been through some stuff. We've gone through some of the most complex military operations this country's ever conducted, and your steady hand and your leadership during those was a great source of strength for me. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your character. Thank you for your selfless service. Thank you for commitment. Thank you for being a mentor to me, Mr. Vice President.
It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. Did I get that one right? Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
This is a president of the United States who is a danger to the republic.
America first.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans.
The great Trump recovery.
America will never be a socialist country. I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, Russian, Russia, Russian, 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 the Russians. Russia,
Russia.
And I will never, ever let you down.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this.
The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. What they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Together, we will make America strong again. You know what it's about? Fraud, fake ballots. We will make America wealthy again. They are trying to steal the election.
Now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of Special Operations Forces.
We will make America proud again. And watch, please, those mail-in ballots. We will make America safe again. And in millions and millions of ballots. Their vote is under what they thought they needed. They're dumping more ballots in there, okay? And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Devolution Power Hour. Couple housekeeping things. This is a pre-record. It is afternoon where I'm at. Well, mid-afternoon. But it is at least Wednesday, so we're not too far.
Yeah.
We're not
John
coming
just kept walking until he found legitimate Wi-Fi signal, and it took him completely out of the Dakotas.
Bro, we're 7 minutes in, and you probably just jinxed it. So let's just wait. I'm at a hotel on the Wi-Fi. I'm not too confident, but we shall see how this goes. Also, Kyle is out tonight. I feel like I haven't seen that guy at all recently, like one time in the past month or so.
Rumors tell of his existence. He is still around. He's scrounging around in the info war, but
he's sick.
He got some sniffles. Wishing him the best.
Raise this chair up. Oh, nice. Is that a good height?
You should have really figured out the chair logistics before we went fake live.
This is real live, just early from the future, from the past.
Right.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, should be a fun show regardless. We do have, I think, some good topics to discuss. We got media turning on Kamala Harris. That'll be a fun one. The Jack Smith superseding indictment. And by the way, these are not in order because I think I want to start with the Jack Smith indictment. Zelensky. I don't remember what you said about Zelensky, but I wrote down Zelensky. So something along those
being
lines.
A little hoe, being a bit of a whore when it comes to peace talks, which is, I think, a good thing.
Okay. And then we got some transition stuff. And we're not talking about your transition to female. Right. We're talking about presidential transition things. So yeah, going to be a fun one. And we might get into some NSPM stuff at the end. We'll see. But before we do any of that, we got to get a word from our sponsor of today's show. We're very thankful for these guys, Field of Greens. This almost never happens. Guys, I've shared how I love Field of Greens for my own health. And so if you've waited to try it, like literally now is the perfect time. Brickhouse Nutrition is having an end of summer site-wide sale. And with the code RUMBLE, RUMBLE, you'll save big on everything, including Field of Greens. Field of Greens is my healthiest habit by far. It's whole organic fruits and vegetables. This is exactly what your body needs for proper nutrition. Each organic superfruit and vegetable in Field of Greens was selected by doctors to support vital organs like your heart, liver, kidneys, metabolism, and immune system. And only Field of Greens is backed by a better health promise. At your next checkup, your doctor will notice your improved health or you get all of your money back. That basically means it's like free. I think, because if you don't like it, you get your money back. So it's almost free. Don't miss this massive end of summer sale. Go to fieldofgreens.com. Use promo code RUMBLE to save on everything. So get on this deal before it goes away. Fieldofgreens.com, promo code RUMBLE. Fieldofgreens.com, promo code RUMBLE. We'll remind you about this at the end of the show. But that is like free, isn't it? Like, so you buy something, you either use it and it like makes you super duper healthy, risk free. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Because if you don't like it, you just get all your money back. I wish it was like that with most things.
I thought that the classic flavor of Field of Greens was gonna be the grossest because it's like dark green, and I figured they added the flavored ones because that one was gross, and it's my favorite flavor. So they actually taste good. They're not just healthy stuff. They're like legitimately tasty.
It is very tasty. I'm a big fan of the wild berry flavor. That'd be my favorite, but I feel like I'm always out of that one. So I've been dabbling with the lime or the original. The OG's good. They're all good. Guy. Yeah, you are. Is that because you have Lyme disease?
Oh my god, yeah, it probably is. You know,
set yourself up for that.
Now that you mention it. Don't know if Field of Greens cures Lyme disease, but it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt at all. All right, let's talk about the superseding indictment real quick with Jack Smith, because this is pretty fascinating, I think. Maybe
One
not
of the
fascinating.
best kinds of fake indictments.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing is a joke because, well, first of all, the Trump J6 case got, appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court looked at it and they're like, well, Trump basically does have immunity on pretty much everything, but we're going to send it back, remand it back to you guys in the lower courts. And you're going to have to go through each action and decide whether or not it falls under these parameters we've laid out for you. And then now Jack Smith comes back with another indictment. He went to a grand jury, a new DC grand jury, allegedly. And I think there's like 4 charges in this indictment. I'm not even 100% sure on all the details. But one of the details I am 100% sure on is that the case can't even be like brought before the election. And Trump has posted about this being, you know, the DOJ has a policy that within 60 days of an election, you can't bring any charges against one of the candidates. We are within 60 days because early voting starts in early September. So this whole thing is crazy. He knows that he can't get this indictment pushed through prior to Trump even being president. And they're saying in the article, in some of the articles, that, you know, Trump, if he wants to, if he does get elected, he can just basically throw this thing out, order his DOJ to toss the case. And so there's 2 sides I'm looking at this of why they're doing it. Number one, it's pre-election narrative, trying to, again, you know, make Trump seem like this big bad villain and maybe hope that will sway voters from him. If that doesn't work, they are kind of dropping a little bomb for Trump during his administration, so that if he does come out and is like, no, DOJ, drop this case, there could be some bad press from that. But by then it might not even matter. I don't know.
Booby traps.
Yeah.
I had found a CNN article. I don't know if this was the first one that was breaking this, but, you know, they were among the first here. And I thought that, if you want to share my screen here, I thought just the wording, this is where, you know, I really take Trump pretty seriously. In a private chat earlier, I'd said, you know, Trump refers to the trial as the fake trial, the fake indictments. And I know Chris talks about this quite a bit. I really do think he's sort of talking to multiple audiences when he says that. He's talking to the normie layers and saying these charges should never have been brought and there's not going to be real consequences. So you can take that reading of fake. I think you're also allowed to take a more Chris Paul reading of fake as well when he says that. But just the way they talk about this, special counsel files reworked indictment. And I try to engage with these things as, what if I'm a normie just seeing this crap come across my feed? In the first couple paragraphs here, special counsel Jack Smith on Tuesday filed a superseding indictment, slimming down the allegations against the nominee in light of the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. Prosecutors have not dropped any of the 4 charges they initially brought. However, the newly retooled indictment has carved out some of Trump's alleged conduct, including allegations, blah, blah, blah. It also adjusts how prosecutors describe the allegations. So just the way it's being presented, even to a normie that hates Trump, is we didn't get him on any of the charges. There's no new charges. We're literally telling you that it's like the teacher told you needs improvement and gave you the note on the top of the paper and sent you home. And you just changed a couple words and you're hoping that they're just going to accept it and give you credit for the assignment. Like, to a normie, I think that's what Jack Smith is doing. To us, I think I'm not worried about, you know, even when you say, hey, maybe the worst case scenario is they're trying to lay some traps for Trump 2.0. You know what? If we're in the stage where we're talking about that, and that really is the way that they're kind of arraying the game board, that's really good news, because it means at least some of these factions do believe the second Trump administration is inevitable, even while some of them still continue to say that he's going to lose a fake election.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It is pretty funny when you think about how they're doing this. It's like the media and all these people have been telling us that what Trump did through these indictments, like what Trump did is so bad. He's literally destroying democracy. But then the Supreme Court's like, well, not really. He has immunity. And so they come back. He's like, well, he's still kind of destroying democracy. We just
what if we change the wording?
Yeah.
You know, even if, imagine, most people, the truth community don't read the actual indictments, right? So imagine being a normie and they're telling you, it's like, did you discover new crimes? No. The Supreme Court said that we didn't really have the basis to bring any of these charges in the first place, so we're rewording the crimes until we get them. And it's just, again, it sort of just shows that, as if anybody didn't know this, it's a witch hunt. It's purely political in nature. And I think we're at the point where, besides the MAGA audience, especially with the RFK bringing a good number of independents into the conversation. And I think even liberals are starting to look at this and just be exhausted by it. They're like, guys, you're embarrassing us, right? Even if they want to get the orange man, it starts to make them look like the conspiracy theorists. We're like, no, that he's still guilty of these things. We just have to get the wording exactly right before he goes to prison forever.
Well, I just don't think anybody cares. Like, does anybody ever talk, like in your conversations with people, does anybody ever talk about Trump's indictments anymore?
No. And honestly, they used to. Like, if I want to play devil's advocate, I would say I'm an argumentative person. I educate myself on these things as you do. So there's a reason a lot of people in my friends and family that are not Trump people are not going to start Trump conversations with me. But besides that, even as recently as a year ago, in-laws, Canadians, etc., even my parents sometimes would throw in a little, well, he's a criminal, well this, well that. There's none of that anymore. And I really think it's exhaustion. It's like, it's the boy who cried wolf. At a certain point, this is going to be the thing that takes down the orange man, and they've been saying it for almost 10 years.
It really only feeds the mainstream media and their talking points. From the beginning, we've been saying how these indictments, they were never meant to even like get this far, and if they ever did, it wasn't really supposed to matter, because their sole purpose, in my opinion, was to make Trump unelectable during the primaries. People being like, oh, well, we can't vote for a guy with 96 indictments. We got to vote for DeSantis. And they thought that might work. That narrative attack, they thought that might work, but it didn't. And so now that they're here, like, what do? You can't just like, okay, well, there's no there, so we're just going to drop all these cases. Like that's worst case scenario for them, dropping all these cases. So you have to keep going with it. But what do you do when you keep going with something that doesn't even exist? You get what you get now. You get rewordings.
Going back to your earlier point about, are they trying to lay groundwork to sort of bait Trump into throwing out the indictments himself, acting like something of a dictator? I could see them trying to do that, but I don't think it's going to happen, because the bottom line is, if there was any there, these indictments would have had, these charges would have had way more legs, and the cases would have had more legs than they have, right? So the Supreme Court wouldn't have been ruling the way it has. So I don't think that Trump is going to give them the satisfaction of tossing this stuff. He's going to let the process play out. And I know I've mentioned him quite a few times in this specific conversation. I find some of Jonathan Turley's articles to be sort of normie-ish, but several months ago, he specifically used the term attrition when talking about what he thinks is going to happen with these cases. And I really think Turley is proving out to be right. He was saying, you know, as a legal scholar, there's no there. He knew this. He just took a closer look at it, being in the sort of lawfare industry. But he was trying to map exactly what we're talking about. What are they going to do when these charges don't stick? And he was saying, well, they're not going to toss the charges because that looks like giving up. So he thought they're going to keep trying to bring them, and they're going to exhaust all their options until eventually the courts give them off-ramps. And one by one, these prosecutors are going to take those off-ramps as long as the off-ramp allows them to say, we still were going after the orange man, we just ran out of ammo, essentially. I think you've kind of seen that in the Georgia case, and I'm certainly not the expert on these things. But now with Smith, he seems like the most stubborn one. But Turley's saying, like, yeah, he'll change the wording, he'll change the indictments, but the election's going to come and go. And then you know what Smith is going to be able to do to the liberal overlords is just come out and say, hey, I tried, but he's the president now, so bringing new charges isn't going to do anything at this point.
Yeah, and if you guys remember from the immunity case from the Supreme Court, in their ruling, Justice Thomas, he had a concurring opinion, but it was a separate opinion, where he talked about the legality of Jack Smith's appointment in the first place.
Right.
And that we haven't seen that piece of the puzzle truly come into focus yet. And that's something I think Trump's team is like holding in their back pocket. And that could even be something we don't see until after Trump's back in office in the first place. But when you think about that, you have somebody going after Trump who legally shouldn't even be doing so. Like, there's no legality to the special counsel. And so I do anticipate we'll see that at some point too. But it just makes the whole thing that much more cartoonish. The fact that nobody cares except the mainstream media. Nobody cares about the mainstream media. but they're rewording this stuff anyway just to keep it going because they literally have no choice. But it's all narrative warfare.
Yeah.
That's what we're in.
Yeah, and that point you just made actually about Smith potentially not being legitimate in the first place, it recalls a lot of our conversations for the last year and a half about the election and what we think is or isn't going to happen. And, one of the things I've made the argument in the past back and forth on about the exposure of 2020 election fraud is that I try to think about what scenario would look the best for Trump, to sort of give him the most bipartisan public mandate in his second administration. Mm-hmm. What exposure of election fraud? We've talked about, is it a thing where they refuse to allow him to take office and the military gets involved? I think a lot of us have said that's just concerning, even if it's just, it's concerning when it comes to the brainwashing that so many normies have and what that would look like. So in that scenario, I've often said that one of the hypotheticals I've thought of is the exposure of 2020 election fraud not occurring until after Donald Trump is in there again and maybe either overwhelms the fraud, however he gets in, because we would get the retroactive justification or verification, vindication of 2020, but Trump is going to look so good to a bipartisan audience because with devolution and everything else, it implies he had other options that he chose not to exercise. And I think with Jack Smith, the point you just made is similar. How good would it look if Donald Trump allows a bullshit legal process to carry through all the way until it runs out of ammo, only to retroactively prove, hey guys, by the way, none of these indictments were even legally brought in the first place? It just is going to make him look even better, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I do have to address the point you made about the election being exposed after 2020, because one of the things, I mean, it's possible, totally possible. That's how this plays out. Trump legitimately wins. He gets in there and then exposure comes after the fact. The reason I'm so, I find that point to be, I don't know, just it doesn't have legs to me is because like Trump's already tried that. Trump did that in 2017. He created that commission on election. I think Pence was the one who headed up. He got stonewalled everywhere. And if we don't get election integrity prior to this election, there's going to be down ballot races. And we've already seen them kind of shift focus away from the presidential race to the down ballot stuff. And there's even discussion of them basically stealing the presidency from Trump because of the down ballot races with the 14th Amendment thing. And so I don't think that's going to do it. It's possible. It is. Maybe they are capable of turning off the cheating and they can get all the down ballot races however they want. But even that I don't think is good enough to me, because most of these primaries get stolen. Like I just saw something they did in what was it, Omaha, or I don't remember where it was, but one of these states, it's I think normally a red state, but it's a bigger city, and they changed the voting system so that the only two people that get to the final election, like they put all the primary candidates from both parties into one election, and the top two from that make it to the final election day race. And so the Republicans had a whole bunch of candidates. The Democrats only put in two people, and they ended up, so both Democrats are going to be running against each other in the general election. And stuff like that just all over the country. It's just bullshit. And I don't see how we can really fix anything unless it gets exposed in a big way and we'd get like a rerun of sorts. And I don't think we're going to get a rerun after the fact.
No, I get that. I think when I try to game it out, I have a hard time turning off Patriot control lensing in terms of that they have control ultimately over where it's going. So then if I take accepting that premise can be argued against, right? But if we take that premise, the second point becomes, how do they then choose? If Patriots have the ability to turn off cheating, etc., I would agree that isn't enough, right? Because the whole point is we can't rely on that in the future. Even if you could turn off cheating on one election, you didn't turn it off on another one. As soon as these guys are out of power, we're going to lose our elections again anyway, so it doesn't matter. That wouldn't be a satisfying way to address things. I just more look at it as, what story would Patriots want to tell the biggest audience about election fraud in order to expose election fraud? And I've wondered if it is another Trump loss. I think it's absolutely possible. We've talked about Trump losing again. Chris says we're going to get the hose again. The rug pull boys talk about getting rugged. The thing is, I wonder, in storytelling, when you do the same thing twice, you're not hitting a new audience. That's why I think of it this way. Trump supporters are going to be absolutely fucking furious, right? If he gets rugged again. And we're going to be calling that it was election fraud, but we've been doing that the whole time. So how do you get independents or liberals to cry election fraud? And it makes me wonder if we might see something closer to a mirror of 2016 rather than 2020, where Trump wins, but it was a fraudulent election. And to your point, let's say you're right, and some of the concerns you've laid out and Kyle have laid out about down ballot races, I know Chris has as well. Let's say that happens, right? They steal a ton of down ballot races, but for whatever reason, they're not able to fully steal the presidency. Trump gets the presidency. You'll still have the public mandate for a massive election audit because normies who hate Trump will want the election audited because he's the president. They won't understand that he would be a totally inept president losing all the down ballot races. So if you get them calling for an election audit, Trump can then agree to the audit. And then if that audit shows not only did I win, I won by a massive margin and the fraud was on the down ballot races, like, it's kind of hopium, but I also think it would be effective. It's like you've got to get a bipartisan audience to call for election audits. And how do you do that? By just running the same thing we saw in 2020. I don't know that that's the way forward.
Okay, I got a lot to respond to that with. I'll see if I can do it. So one, I don't think we need bipartisan. I think you need majority. Okay, so like at this point, we're not going to get I don't think there's a true bipartisan future in America based on the parties that we have now, like the true leftists and the mega
never Trumpers and that kind of.
Yeah, I mean there is some bipartisan when you think like Tulsi Gabbard is now endorsing Trump, and same with RFK Jr. And we'll talk about some of that here later on, but that I can consider bipartisan, but that's more just unity, I think, than it is actual bipartisan. We don't need them. We have the big majority. Okay, that's one part. I want to chew on a little bit some game theory stuff about looking at 2024 in the full control context. I want to read this post from Trump from the other day about the Biden debate and something I think I said on that Power Hour not long ago. This is what Trump says. If Biden didn't do the debate, he would be the Democrat candidate for president right now. The fact is, debate or no debate, the Democrats really did a number on him. And so Trump says it. He's like, if we didn't do that debate, he would still be the candidate. And so it makes you wonder, okay, why did Trump agree to a debate? Like that debate took place when neither one of these guys were the actual nominee for their party yet. The conventions hadn't taken place. So this was, if we're talking full control, this was Trump taking out Biden on purpose because he knew how this would go down. Like everybody with any common sense knew how awful Biden was. Okay. So why did Trump do that? Why would Trump want to replace Biden with Kamala? What's the game theory in that? Oh, are you?
I was receiving a coffee order from my assistant.
Oh, nice.
Wolf Bright.
But
why would
game theory wise?
The last question, yeah.
So if we're looking at the game theory of this, Trump took Biden out on purpose. He put Kamala in there on purpose. What would the reason for that be in the context of an upcoming 2024 election? Do you think it's so that it's more likely for them to steal it or not get away with the steal?
No. Yeah, well, it's interesting because my immediate response would would be that. I mean, would Kamala be even more cartoonish than Biden? I guess she would.
They're protecting her. Like she won't even do an interview.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess for us, we know how ridiculous the Biden presidency was, and he was declining at such a rapid rate in the public eye that there's a part of me that thinks them stealing it for Biden again would have been more illuminating for Patriot plans than the Kamala thing. So that is something that's hard. It's hard to wrap my mind around that. But I don't know, with some of the media turning on Kamala, we talk about accelerationism a lot, and if I do think of the game theory there, I absolutely think, to your point, it was intentional to front run. I think that Patriots knew they were going to swap out Joe Biden, and it does map onto those early Q drops with change of batter. But I think what Patriots did with that debate, the early debate, was they front ran that. They accelerated the timeline. So, I've wondered if the Kamala swap was supposed to be the October surprise. And then the first 2 weeks of the Kamala swap, we saw all the media fawning over, look, the polls, she's amazing. Like, and boom, she won the election. So maybe by front running that by 2 months, we're already at the point where August 27th, 28th, the media is running articles talking about all the problems that are starting to creep up in Kamala's campaign. It's going viral that she won't do interviews, and now the first one she's doing, she needs the white man with her. It's going to be pre-recorded, probably a canned interview. Yeah.
Why did you say it like that?
Who white man? It's just the way scholars say white.
Okay.
But, I really just think, I really can't shake the feeling. I think you've said similar things that I can't imagine Kamala is the last stop on the deep state sort of dominoes train. Okay. I still can't shake the feeling. I cannot shake the feeling that she is not going to be the one there on November 5th, and that Trump and them know that, and they've just been accelerating like, come on, get to the next chapter, get to the next one after that.
Okay, well, let's think about this for a second. If they wouldn't have agreed to that first debate, Biden likely would have gotten the nomination. They would have debated after that, and then at that point tried to make a switch probably.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, they probably would have had to 25th Amendment him and make him unelectable in some fashion. And then what happens at that point? Are they able to even get away from Kamala in that situation?
Right.
Like was front running the debates and everything a way to ensure they got Kamala versus anybody else?
Patriots, right? You're saying?
Patriots, yep. And then another thought about this is if now okay, so if they would have waited till after the nomination and debated, on the schedule that they should have,
yeah,
Trump never probably would have been able to debate Kamala. But now, the fact that she's dodging all these debates,
she's ducking all the debates, right?
It's weird, but at some point I feel like they're going to have to debate, and I can't imagine how bad that's going to go for them. Maybe this is a way to ensure that they get a debate between Trump and Kamala, who was going to end up being the nominee anyway.
I actually like that. Yeah, maybe that does make sense, because I've been trying to reconcile. It seems very clear that they accelerated this pattern.
Yes,
Patriots accelerated this pattern. Yeah, the question is why. And that's why I've been playing with, besides, obviously, I'm influenced by certain readings of the drops talking about, or actually, I shouldn't even say the drops say this, but just my interpretation has always been that we're going to see some of those original players, the Clintons, the Obamas, really back in a very prominent role. You are seeing them tiptoe back into the narrative, but not fully. They're not running for president. So that's influenced some of my theories. But that does make sense that if the deep state was going to look at this, maybe their ideal scenario was the old Yeller template, like, hey, we stuck with Joe as long as we could, and we just couldn't do it anymore. But whoops, this is what we're stuck with, and now they have to Trump is forcing them to run an actual fake campaign heading into November. And, I mean, I guess in that scenario, I could see them doing the full rug pull of 2024. It feels a bit like a repeat of 2020 to me. Maybe that is the point. Again, I just try to keep it in my mind of saying, is there a scenario of Trump winning, quote unquote, winning on November 5th that actually helps us expose election fraud? When I say bipartisan, I do agree with you that we don't need that. But I also don't think the Trump base has grown exponentially since 2020. I think it's bigger. Yeah, I mean, maybe it just hasn't been that bad.
If you take an actual definition of what bipartisan means, Trump has that already with RFK and Tulsi and some of these other things going on.
Look at Badlands. Half of us are former Democrats. It's hilarious.
Yeah, that is true. That's crazy. One thing, last thing on this I want to point out, and then we can move on to the next topic. But I think back to the stream that you and I did after the midterms, and you made the point of, like, do you really think Trump would walk away from a stolen election and rely on the same method that like removed him in elections in order to get him back into office? And with that in mind, like how can we approach 2024 with that in mind and figure out how this gets resolved? And we're not going to figure out how this gets resolved. Like we don't know for sure, but I'm just some game theory discussion. If he is relying on that system, that means they have control over it and they literally can turn on or off the cheating. And so, man, I just.
But that's concerning. Like I don't like it.
It doesn't expose it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. That's why when I lay out a scenario of Trump winning on November 5th, I still use the term fake election and say Trump could win a fake election or an election that is fraudulent. You know, he could still be the rightful winner of a real election, but if there is cheating, it is a fraudulent election and should be examined. So I've just tried to look at that scenario and say, I mean, hey, even, I don't know if you guys have said this exactly, but when you talk about down ballot races, you could even frame it and say, does the deep state want to give him the presidency to shield them from doing all this other stuff because they know if they steal it again? This is where there probably is a lot of this game theory going on. I mean, I am somebody who really does think about patriot control, but I do try to turn that off and just say, all right, let me assume that this is game theory and the other side gets a vote and makes decisions as a free actor in this war. I think that patriots have put Kamala in there. That actually brings us back to the Kamala thing. Why Kamala? Kamala might map onto the game theory thing where patriots have saddled them, just like you said about 2020. They've saddled them with the worst possible candidate. And they're now putting the ball in the deep state's court and saying, are you really going to steal it for this?
Yeah.
Or are you going to give us the presidency and try to steal everything else? So I've just thought, though, if they do give them the presidency, give us the presidency and steal everything else, Trump could look great and get even more support, you know, bring more people into the tent if he's like, you know what? Even though I won the election, there's a lot of concern by the Democrats about election fraud. We're going to look at the whole thing. We're going to have an independent audit of 2024. It's just, it would be unnecessary for him to do, which is why I think it would be so good. And the reason people like us, I think, would like that is, to your point, it doesn't make me feel comfy to believe that patriots can turn the voting on and off, because I never know if they're going to be active in future elections. I shouldn't have to rely on an election system that cheating has to be turned off like a cheat code on, right? So I firmly agree that we need whole-scale reform. I just wonder how we're going to get it. I wonder if it's going to be, if Trump just gets fully rug pulled again, is it just, hey, we did this twice now, we're not going to do it again?
And okay, I lied. I have one more thing. Another thing that leads me to believe that Trump wants them to steal it is, think of how he has changed his mindset. Like 2020, it was vote same day in person, do not use mail-in ballots. And now it's like vote early, mail in your ballots, like all the things, ballot harvest, Scott
ballot
Presler.
Harvest. Yeah.
It's weird. Like why the switch? And I can't imagine it's because we're just going to kind of try to out cheat them. Trump wouldn't be relying on that. I think he wants the atmosphere around the election to be as rife for possible fraud as possible. And the only reason I think he would want to do that is because that affects him negatively on the actual level or narrative level, both levels, many levels. It affects him on many levels. He's going to be the one that would potentially lose from a stolen election, because I think they have the election infrastructure in place to steal it. And so I think he wants that. I think for the country to heal is we need the election to be stolen. It's going to be crazy for a minute.
And 4 years of Kamala.
No. And then an immediate audit all over the place.
Yeah.
And expose the fraud, and then you do a whole new thing. We could have a whole new entire political system in place by the time that's done. But anyway.
Well, you're just one point on the ballot harvesting. It is something that people can wonder why we get so annoyed at Con Inc. and Scott Pressler for going door to door and being absolute unmitigating. I'm not going to use the word, but
gay boys.
Yeah. The reason we get so pissed about that is because when they use that, we've all seen the language that people like that employ when they're like, the reason we're losing is because we're not getting down in the mud with the Democrats. Like, imagine trying to teach your kid how to get better at football, and you're like, listen, the reason that you're losing is because you're not cheating as hard as the other team. What you need to do is right when you get into the pile, fish hook that motherfucker. And there are parents who do this, right? Like fish hook, eye gouge, hit him in the nuts, bite him, do whatever you need to do. That's bad parenting. That's bad leading. So what Pressler and the gang are really telling you is we need to cheat harder at this rigged game than the other guys because we're actually the same fucking thing as them. And we in this community don't want to be the same thing as them. We actually want free and fair elections, so we want to address the root cause rather than winning a political game that they've put in place for us. That's why participating in that ballot harvesting, to your point, and all that shit, it's making you are lending your direct power and mandate to a fraudulent system when you participate in that shit.
Yeah. And we're not far off this topic, so we might as well just go right into it. Let's talk a little bit about some of the bipartisan stuff. We had not just RFK Jr. come out in support of Trump, and there's been some interesting lawfare stuff going on there too, because he tried pulling his name off the ballot in a lot of the battleground states, but the states themselves, the state legislatures there, have been fighting to keep him on. So that's
Michigan, Wisconsin, and Colorado are refusing.
Yeah, and that's some weird shit there. So clearly all three of those states are gonna end up with a Kamala victory because they're setting it up right now. But then on top of that, we had Tulsi Gabbard come over to Trump's side. The real bipartisan, and these are both people that they were kind of pushed away from the Democrat Party by the Democrat Party leadership. And I wouldn't even say that they're like coming over to the America First side. I mean, I believe them to be America First people, but I think both these guys are actual Democrats. It's just that they're so turned off by the deep state establishment within the Democrat Party that they see that Trump is the only solution to getting rid of it. And that's the part that I find most fascinating about it. I don't necessarily think it's like because they agree with so many of Trump's policies, which they do to a degree, but they're just so pissed off and fed up with what's been going on in the Democrat Party.
Yeah, and turning off full-scale Patriot Plan, like I can't get over a Trump and a Kennedy. And when I say a Kennedy, he's not just a Kennedy. Like there really is something to he's the son of Robert Kennedy. He's the nephew of John F. Kennedy, right? Like there's a million Kennedys. I live near them. Like there's people that married into that family and took the name because of the legacy. There's all manner of them. Most of them are cucks these days. I'm not even just saying Democrats. They're like globalist establishment shills. They followed in the footsteps of Ted, who was a murderer and the worst Kennedy. But there's something really magical about that name being attached to Trump. And there's something equally magical about seeing the entire establishment now go to war with like really the last kind of scion of that Kennedy name and calling him a conspiracy theorist. It's like, if there's a guy in the zeitgeist you don't want to weaponize the media against, it's the one whose dad and uncle were involved in the two most famous American assassinations ever, with the exception of maybe Abraham Lincoln and MLK. Like, those are the two. So that's huge. But on Sunday night, I kind of mentioned this one hits me particularly because, to your point about them not being total MAGA people and everything, I thought Robert Kennedy gave what I've had my suspicions of him. I thought his speech was one of the great speeches that I have seen in ages. And I know there's the voice thing and all that, but it felt...
It was based as hell. It was based.
It felt real, right? There's so much, like even with Trump, we talk about the games that are being played when he's talking and the game theory involved in it. I can't recall seeing a speech, besides Trump's inauguration maybe, where it felt like somebody was talking to the American people with what they believe needs to happen for the good of the country. And I remember being a liberal. And what's funny about how you set this conversation up is I remember that I didn't just grab onto Donald Trump or become a Republican or anything like that. I still don't identify myself as a Republican. It started with slowly, piece by piece, rejecting my own propaganda. It was the first one I really turned on was Barack Obama. Then I turned on Hillary Clinton. And then I still didn't go to the other side. I just I was disillusioned with politics. And I think what the American people are seeing in these figures of Gabbard and Kennedy is that. It's exactly what you said. They're seeing that they didn't just become MAGA. They basically were just thrown out to sea by the Democrat establishment, and the Trump boat are the ones who came by and scooped them up. Yep. So, and this is another thing that I think is really encouraging for MAGA people that don't like, that have their suspicions of these people. I probably defended women's rights to choose and all that shit back when I was parroting Democrat talking points.
You shouldn't admit that.
Yeah. But it's, you can change those views. Like those views can go back, and I don't know. I mean, I really think it feels authentic to me, which is a dangerous game to play here. But if you needed any more evidence that there's something authentic going on here, it's not just that these two figures are saying they're MAGA. It's that Donald Trump is now introducing them like rock stars at his speeches. So there's more to it.
And they're part of the transition team too. So, that's a good sign as well, because I think one of the things a lot of people look to when it comes to Trump's first term, and some of this I do believe was very legitimate, is like allowing the enemy to expose itself and put people in place in Trump's administration that were the enemy, and Trump allowed it to happen. And so everybody's like, oh, Trump's terrible at, his cabinet picks, his people picks. And I fully disagree with that. But I guess it depends on who he has helping to make the decisions. Some of these people, like a Kennedy and a Tulsi, who have been, disillusioned by the Democrat Party and pushed away, they might have every reason to make sure that those people that did that to them don't get back into Trump's administration and get any sense of power. One thing about the Kamala Harris stuff, which I find funny in terms of like this upcoming election and Democrats, and like she's running on change. Like if you ask any of her supporters, like what do you like most about, why are you voting for Kamala? It's like, well, I think it's just time for a change. And I don't like people don't understand how stupid they sound when they say that.
It's amazing.
From the current vice president.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah, it was 2 Wednesdays ago or last Wednesday. I was saying something like that. The idea that the entire establishment has come out and things have gotten so bad that they didn't reject that premise. They actually agree. Like Trump and them are both coming out on stage, essentially saying the same thing. Everything sucks. It's just that Trump is saying it was good when I was here. Now it's really bad that I'm not, but I'm going to make it good again. They're saying, listen, everything sucks. We're in power right now, but we're going to react to everything sucking under our watch by taking power again and doing the opposite of everything we've been doing, which is why you're seeing her talk about tax on tips and border wall funding. Yeah, it's incredible.
It's not just that, everything sucks right now, but we're going to make it better. But it's also we're going to make it better by doing all the things that Trump says he's going to do and that he did in his first term. It's
trying to brand Donald Trump as an illegal immigration president, like pro illegal immigration, is crazy. I didn't have it on my bingo card.
I didn't either. Anyway, that's
I do have a couple of those headlines on Kamala. On that subject,
the media.
So I thought this was fascinating, and these articles are bullshit. They're just stupid, random crap, right? But 2 of these hit the same day. This was yesterday, August 27th. So The Hill, 5 looming challenges for Vice President Harris. This one is not as scathing, but it's outlining all these problems she's got. We talked about debating Trump, the optics of it, her first TV interview, her failure so far to grant a major interview has given conservatives some rhetorical ammunition, how to explain shifts in position, which is what we were just talking about.
What does it say?
Dealing with Trump. What does it say here? Whether a debate or serious TV interview, we'll see Harris come under pressure over issues on which she has changed her position. There's a number of topics. Harris supported a ban on fracking when she ran for the Democratic nomination in 2020. She no longer favors such a move. During the 2020 primary campaign, she also indicated she did not believe people who crossed the border without authorization had committed a crime. She now hews to a tougher position on border security, like as in it's illegal. Harris was among those who backed a so-called Medicaid for all proposal, Medicare for all. She is no longer pushing that idea. So one of many, but then this is really what got my jimmies rustling.
Well, can I just comment on that? It's like they're trying to make her more electable because they know those are things that everybody hates.
Yeah.
So they're like, we know she said this before, guys, but she doesn't believe those things anymore. Oil industry people, don't worry.
Yeah.
You know, open immigration, don't worry, guys. Like she's changing her tune in all these very like hot button issues because she's that bad of a candidate on those issues.
And that the establishment that she represents, their issues are bad, right? And that's what's funny. The way you lay that out, this is not a hit piece, but it reads like a hit piece. That's how bad they are right now. But this is what really got me. Same day, Politico, the 5 warning signs for Harris. So if you get deja vu here, 5 looming challenges for Harris. 5 warning signs for Harris. They were not the only 2. There's others if you go to like Google News. And this looks to me, taking the content of the articles aside, they say a lot of the same stuff. Hasn't sought for an interview, debates, where's the policy? So they're almost the same points, right?
Yeah, these
Trump
are talking
support,
points that were put out.
These were talking points that were put out. That's exactly what hit me. These retards in the Hill and Politico didn't get in the same Slack group before they hit publish and used the same wording and the same number of thingies to put into their Harris propaganda. But, so it really just shows it's 4 a.m. talking points, but what is the purpose here? Is the purpose actually what you said? Is it actually to make her more electable? Or is it them sending warning flares to each other like they were with Biden a couple months ago and talking about the issues with him?
Well, it's so weird because most people, like how many people are actually going to go into those things? The people who read the Hill and the Politico and actually go through and read all those things, or they're just going to like read the headlines.
Yeah, it's
be like,
headlines.
Warning signs for Kamala, challenges for Kamala. Like they're almost seeding that doubt that she can win.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought.
Fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they be doing that?
Which a few months ago, I think it was like July, we really started to see this. But warning signs emerge for Biden. Top aides close to Biden say that he's sharp, but not all the time. And, we started seeing that. And this is the first I feel like I've seen since the switchover where you had a coordinated push that, again, I wouldn't call them hit pieces on Harris, but they felt like coaching. Like, okay, Harris team, things are not going well. I know we've been carrying your water, and I've talked about this for a few months, but I always use the archipelago concept with the media. It really feels like they're not on the same page as Harris. They might back her, but they are not on the same page, and they're trying to get some sort of sense of urgency into the Harris campaign.
Well, okay. On that point, if we look back to what happened after the debate between Trump and Biden, they were all on the same page. Like it was a unified outcry that Biden could not beat Trump. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's play with this for a second. Let's pretend they are all on the same page. But remember, we're in a period right now of narrative warfare. Like all the things that Trump implemented prior to leaving office having to do with irregular warfare. You had Chris Miller come in, the irregular warfare guru. He's the guy that was the acting Secretary of Defense. Like they walked away while implementing a period of 5th generation warfare, psyops versus psyops, going back and forth. And maybe I won't say we, but there's some belief in our community and within people on Badlands and some people on the Power Hours that believe Elon Musk got Twitter as part of some potential, like whether it's 848 or 818 or one of these executive orders, like he was allowed to take over Twitter in the middle of the most consequential narrative warfare phase in history. It's just crazy how that happens.
Yeah.
Why can't the same type of stuff be done to the media? And how do we know like some of these talking points that get put out aren't done by the white hats because these people have been captured because of the crimes they've committed previously? Now, with all that in mind, let's say you were going to steal an election for Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it make it that much worse and more obvious it was stolen if leading up to that election, all the news companies and the media start showing her polling coming down and start writing these bad stories like, oh, she's going to have some, it's going to be a tough road for Kamala, all these challenges, all these things, she's flip-flopping. That would make it like, so if she does end up winning, that would make it that much more obvious that she didn't actually win and it was stolen. Total game theory.
I totally agree with that. I mean, again, we don't know. We'll never know some of these things, but
it's fun to talk about sometimes.
Yeah, when we talk about ghosts in the machine, what you just said is exactly what I mean when I say ghosts in the machine. I think sometimes we're kind of joking when we say it sometimes in terms of, oh, they use the word devolution in the headline. Is that ghost in the machine? Sometimes we're joking.
Yeah.
But when I say ghost in the machine, I'm referring to, I believe that, as you said, to me, it's very logical to assume that if we've acknowledged, and especially with your research, I think we have evidence with public figures like Donald Trump himself and Christopher C. Miller in particular, talking about this period of fifth generation warfare we're in, and branding the mainstream media the enemy of the people. He starts by branding them the enemy of the people. He then later on talks about psyops and fifth generation warfare. Obviously, people in his orbit talk about the fifth gen warfare side of things more. But in the clip you always play, he did say psyops. He said it's psychological warfare.
Yep.
Enemy of the people means enemy combatants. These are enemy psychological combatants. That's often how I frame them in my writing. And if that's the case, then patriots would certainly feel that they have the authority, not only constitutional authority, but the duty to engage on that level of things. And by engage, I don't just mean Donald Trump refuting lying headlines, but also using their tactics against them and getting in there and saying, the 4 a.m. talking points are a real thing. I remember that blowing my mind in the original Q drops because it kept referencing 4 a.m. talking points. And then you start to see, Anon started digging into the apparatus of informational control in this country. And Share Blue, I remember, was a big organization. Media Matters. They literally put out their talking points. They talk about their NGOs put together these think tanks and send them all to Politico and The Hill and on down the line. This is how you should talk about this issue. And then they concoct their headlines like this. So it's not crazy to believe that all you need, the very compartmentalization of the deep state, I think is now being used against them. If you just had ghosts in the machine by patriots that are at the top of that information spigot, nobody at Politico even has to know this. They're just getting, okay, guys, we need to turn on Joe. It looks like Kamala's the move, right? And now they went all in on Kamala, and now these two headlines hitting on the same day made me think the seed is being planted for the next move, but I've been thinking of it as they're going to swap her out. But to your point, it may just be that patriots are saying, no, we want your messaging on Kamala to be completely erratic and to make no sense and have no story, and that's the move.
Yeah, and maybe the end game there would be, I'd imagine, to make it as negative as possible.
Yeah.
And all polls and everything leading up to the election being, except maybe Nate Silver, because fuck that guy, but being like, Trump's going to win in a landslide.
Yep.
And then it doesn't happen. I don't know, man.
And then they will all do an about face on November 6th and say, well, we knew that this was possible, that Kamala was going to win, just like they did last time.
Oh, that'd be, man. We are just 3 months away from this election. Is it 3?
2 in a week.
Is it that?
Yeah.
No.
2
September.
months in a week. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
This is gonna be so much fun. It's gone by so fast. Anyway,
they may still be counting when we're in Myrtle Beach.
I hope they are. I hope they announce it while we're at Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into the Zelensky story, and then we can do some boosts and probably get out of here because I got some things I got to get to.
Yeah.
Tonight.
The Zelensky thing. This is nothing really new, but it just it got my jimmies rustling a bit. So there's the Kursk incursion. I'm sure most people have heard of. Now, we don't know if this shit's true or false or some mix of the two, but the narrative we're being told is that Ukraine is in the midst of arguably its most effective counteroffensive of the war. They've apparently taken a bunch of villages in western Russia and the Kursk region, and they've broken the Russian lines, and I don't really believe any of that shit, but fine, let's give them that. Ghost has actually had some good commentary on this, where he said, even if this is the case, it recalls the Hitler moves made at the end of World War II, where he pushed into Russia, like literally in the same region, and it broke his supply lines by overextending and basically allowed the Russians basically won that. Well, they ended that war.
Yeah.
They didn't win the whole thing. So it's pretty interesting. I choose to believe it's more fake than anything, but that they're using that World War II story template. But really what I wanted to bring up is Zelensky is using the story of the successful Kursk offensive as this negotiating chip where he wants to go to the table. He thinks he's in a period. He's in a position of leverage now where he can actually get some concessions out of Putin. But what it obscures is that Zelensky now wants to go to the negotiating table. He's been tiptoeing his way around this for the whole year. Now he's fully saying he wants to go forward with it. The regime, however, does not want to. I mean, Zero Hedge lays this out well. Kamala Harris is likely to continue Biden's policy of arming Ukraine to the teeth while shunning the idea of ceasefire talks. So the if Harris continues the Biden policy, their stance is the NATO stance, which is that they are now telling Ukraine not to go to the negotiating table with Putin. But the other bit of signal, I think, here is this. Harris and Trump. Now every time Zelensky talks about peace talks, he's talking about Trump. He's no longer talking about the current regime. So he's talking about a package. I think it was Reuters. Former president. We've got
this is
here.
This is interesting to me on multiple different levels. But number one, months ago we were talking about stories coming out of NATO, basically preparing under the assumption that Trump was going to win the presidency. And this is while Biden was still the candidate, but they were like, we need to get into some sort of agreements where we're basically guaranteed funding and Ukraine's guaranteed weapons and all these things. Like they wanted to get in guarantees so that just in case Trump was there, they could Trump-proof NATO and the war. And now it's, I don't know, this almost seems like a little bit of an about face. But another thing I'm thinking of here with this is, now that Trump is the actual nominee, the RNC candidate, and he has been for weeks now, but as the nominee, he is entitled to intelligence briefings. And Zelensky going to him and being like, I want to give my plan to Trump. Trump said he doesn't want any intelligence briefings.
Yeah,
like he said he doesn't want that from the intelligence community. And also, we know Trump is already talking to foreign leaders all over the place. And so, like, there's something weird going on with this story. And I don't believe, like, if Zelensky has been able to make headway into the western regions of Kursk or whatever, it's only because Putin has allowed it and Russia's allowed it. And so why is that? Is so that he could get a bargaining chip, and maybe that I don't know, man. Like, there's something weird going on here, if it's true at all.
Yeah, and I don't have we don't know what's actually going on, but I've been saying for a long time, where I really solidified on my take of Zelensky being, if not controlled directly, then hemmed in. Like, no, he knows he's hemmed in.
Yeah.
And he's hemmed in literally when he's got Putin on one flank, but he's got NATO on the other. It was at the G7 summit. I don't even know if was this last year? Jesus. The infamous summit where there was all the viral images coming out where Zelensky was dressed in his military fatigues and none of the G7 leaders would talk to him.
Yep.
That is when I fully was saying they know he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And I don't know if I brought it up on a Power Hour or not, but a few months, I think it was maybe like a month ago, Vitaly Klitschko, who's the mayor of Kyiv, is also a former heavyweight boxing champion. He named a bridge in Kyiv the Azov Wave. He's got family members in the Azov battalion. He's been calling for Zelensky to resign or be removed if his strategy on Russia doesn't go according to plan, right? So, and then last year we talked about how ostensibly under the orders of Zelensky, Ihor Kolomoisky was raided and arrested and had his assets seized. So kind of interesting that, you know, I don't look at Zelensky as a white hat, like he was planted in Ukraine by patriots. I see it as strings cut. That doesn't mean you're a free man. It means you know who the winning side is. The winning side is Vlad and Uncle Donnie, and we've got a better deal for you than NATO does. Because if you go along with NATO, what these stories are starting to seed even to normies is that NATO wants to bleed Ukraine dry. They want a new forever war. They're talking about, they literally use the word quagmire for Eastern Ukraine, where they want to freeze Russia in a quagmire of war to stop the Russian advance. So now they're telling Ukrainians that even earnestly bought into this bullshit in the first place, NATO isn't going to come save you. They're just going to keep giving you missiles so that you prolong a forever war with Russia and keep Putin busy. Putin is giving him an out. Putin is saying, listen, dude, sign the agreement that you signed in March 2022 that then Boris Johnson in the UK rescinded on your behalf, and we have a deal. So the way I see this going is Zelensky's going to take this victory lap when he finally negotiates a deal with Vladimir Putin. It's going to be brokered by Donald Trump, and it's going to look identical to the original agreement that Vladimir Putin gave them, which was 100%. The Donbass is ours, you stay over there. And I think that NATO knows this now, which is why Zelensky, he takes shots at them all the time. Like in recent articles, he takes little digs where he says, where is it? Zelensky claimed that his Kursk operation has revealed that Putin's red lines are non-existent. He's using that to ask for more munitions and everything from NATO, and he says they're not coming. He says, quote, they don't want to talk about it, and I keep bringing it up, Zelensky said Tuesday in reference to the red line issue with NATO. The Olympics are over, but ping pong is still there. Wow. So, like, he's talking about how NATO is just bloviating and politicking and how he needs more weapons from them. It makes me wonder if they know that they're just sending all their weapons to be recycled in Ukraine and don't want to send any more.
That's interesting. So I fully agree with you on how that gets resolved. I think none of it happens until Trump's back. Like that's the key thing to me is Trump gets back in there, and that's when all the peace starts happening. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking of the Nord Stream story a little bit, and if I remember correctly, we didn't really talk about this, but the most recent article that came out on it was Zelensky like organized and like gave the order for this plan, and the CIA was aware of it, and then supposedly the CIA is like, no, don't do that anymore. And Zelensky said the same thing to the people, but the people went through with it anyway.
Yeah, one of his generals supposedly went rogue.
Yeah, and I don't know how much I believe about any of that story.
None of it.
None of it at all. Yeah, but it's just, I mean, the whole like Zelensky going counter to NATO, because Germany now is like super pissed off at Zelensky, doesn't want to send him any more money, all these things, and there's got to be some actuals there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's got to be something there. And one of the funny things about the Nord Stream stuff is that I think both can be true. Like, I think the story can be fake, but the details can be true. And that's one of those things that I think that nuance gets lost a lot. It probably was literal Ukrainians who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline on a CIA plan with US backing that Germany knew about ahead of time. And I think we're seeing a few reversals in that narrative. For starters, they're trying to shield the CIA from accountability, obviously. So that's not really working. But the Zelensky angle is interesting because the fact that Germany is pissed at Zelensky right now is, I think the establishment's fallback is to pin everything on Zelensky. And it's not just because he's a fall guy. It's because I think the smarter ones know that he's not necessarily theirs. And, you know, this is just
I like that.
A comparison, but there's the Q drops that say what makes a good movie, good actors. And if I'm not saying that's relating to Zelensky, but I think of Zelensky with it because, again, it's like the dude is an actor. And his handler, we literally know his handler was arrested by him. So who is he acting on behalf of now?
I mean, think about it. It makes total sense. Like, if you have come to the realization that you lost the guy that's leading this quagmire proxy war with Russia, and you want to like find a reason to like get him out of there, if you're the CIA and NATO and all these things, then yeah, you have somebody publish a story where it was Zelensky's fault that Nord Stream was bombed. Then you have another country get super pissed off and be like,
"Yep,
we're not going to send him any more weapons unless he's out of there." Like, there's something there too, man. I don't know.
Yeah, and like I said, the Klitschko thing, I don't see anybody talk about that stuff. And I think whenever you see Ukrainian criticism of Volodymyr Zelensky, it is always by somebody who is involved with the Azov battalion. Yeah. Almost like there's two Ukraines. There's the Ukrainians, and then there is the Azov battalion. That's not
the Azov battalion is not just Nazis, but they're CIA trained and funded. So, okay, I want to quick remind everybody about our sponsor of tonight's show, because this is such a good deal. They wanted me to remind you guys twice, and so that's what I'm doing. Guys, Field of Greens. Again, this literally almost never happens where they have a deal like this, so you guys got to check it out. We've talked a lot about how Field of Greens has been such a great benefit to my health. And so if you've been waiting to try it, or you've been skeptical or haven't pulled the trigger yet, now is the time to do it. They're having their end of summer sale on their entire site, and you got to use promo code RUMBLE. You'll save big on everything, including Field of Greens. Field of Greens is my healthiest habit. It's whole organic fruits and vegetables. This is exactly what your body needs for proper nutrition. Each organic superfruit and vegetable in Field of Greens was selected by doctors to support vital organs like your heart, liver, kidneys, metabolism, and your immune system. And only Field of Greens is backed by a better health promise, where at your next checkup, if your doctor doesn't notice your improved health, you can get your money back. So don't miss this massive end of summer sale. Go to fieldofgreens.com, use code RUMBLE, RUMBLE, to save on everything. That's promo code RUMBLE at fieldofgreens.com. Don't miss the deal, guys. And there's a little QR code on the bottom of our show here. You can also scan that with your phone. That'll work. But yeah, man, we got some boosts, I heard.
We do. Let me check. All right, we got Brogent sent $10 over. BB putting out whale attack disinfo. Humpback crushed the boat off New Hampshire, northern coastline, not Boston. Classic masshole tactic to pretend all of New England is Boston. Seems to be muddying the waters so he doesn't lose shark attack fear narrative.
I
don't
totally
think I said
agree
a
with that.
whale shark.
You probably did.
Whale attack? Oh, whale attack is a humpback. Yeah, it was a humpback. I mean, let's be honest. New Hampshire, Maine waters, they're Boston waters. You're all subservient to Boston. That's the way I think it.
I mean, when I think of East Coasters, I pretty much hate y'all. So, yeah, I can lump them all together like that. That's cool. Just kidding.
New
to the
Hampshire,
East Coast
Rhode Island,
fans.
and they've got that like little dog syndrome going on when it comes to Boston, I think.
Whatever.
S.J. Nessner Jr. S.J. Kess. I don't know how to pronounce that, but sent $50.17. Longtime listener, first-time caller, virtual ticket holder, local supporter. The August 21st DPH was fire. The roads for Devo and Q have finally merged. Appreciate everything you all do. Helps keep my sanity.
Thank you.
That was an awesome episode. And then Saturday was pretty sweet too with
the Kellogg one.
Yeah,
that Kellogg episode that got a lot of, a lot of people talking about it. And then I've noticed like a significant uptick on social media. Like random people talking about devolution now. Like not just saying not just like a Robert Kennedy using it in a speech or an interview, but just like a lot of accounts talking about like that I've never seen before that are surprisingly big accounts are like, oh, devolution, all these things, and it's just kind of weird.
It is weird. It's
good. It's not a bad thing, but kind of weird.
Yeah, it feels like some chains have been loosened or something. We've definitely hit some kind of accelerated pattern. But thank you for the support. Yeah, that was a cool episode. And John, I think, has always talked about, even one of the major Devo articles. We've always talked about devolution and the QOP being parallel, part of the same macro operation. But to that booster's point, it's really cool when you feel like you see something that directly converges, and that is more rare. That Kellogg one, that was incredible. I cannot think, either it was the weirdest interview of all time relating to Twitter posts.
Well, it wasn't an interview. It was his J6 testimony.
Right.
He was being asked those questions by like freaking Liz Cheney and shit, which makes it even that much more crazy. That's how he was responding. But yeah, that was definitely.
You gotta wonder too, when he does stuff like that, if there's a little bit of trolling going on there, right? Like
for sure.
They know that deep state players are looking at that stuff too.
Did you see though that so just a couple days ago, Kellogg was Trump was at the wreath ceremony for the people from Abbey Gate. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's a weird thing itself too, like Trump attending that ceremony. And if you go to Keith Kellogg's Twitter, he shared this, and Kellogg was there with him. Like Kellogg is right here, Trump, and this is when Trump went and laid the wreath on the little easel there or whatever, which I'm pretty sure is like a presidential thing. So a lot of people, this is another time on Twitter, like everybody's like freaking out, taking me and stuff, because it's like a presidential thing that Trump was doing. I don't know. It's just interesting.
It's a head of state move to lay a wreath.
For sure.
I'm not saying legally, right? But like symbolically, it absolutely is.
Yep.
I mean, hey, Kellogg, DPH, good spot for you.
Yeah, man.
Just say he'll come afterwards, after the second admin. Gail Suggs sent $10 over the clip you played of General Kellogg on the same Devolution Power Hour of Trump recognizing him and saying, "You are working on another project now, right?" Kellogg responded, "Yes, sir, and we're going to get it done. Also may validate retired generals in Q." Yeah. I didn't see him say that, but
actually, you know what? I have another clip. No, you keep going. I'm going to see if I can find this.
Film Pro Joe, $17 with a British tech tycoon, a Morgan Stanley exec, and others on board. Do you think there's anything suspicious about the Bayesian sinking so close to shore, especially in light of devolution? Could it have been a hit? Yeah. So this was
we talked
some
about
big
this
executives that on Saturday.
On Baseless Conspiracies on Monday.
Okay, I saw Chris hit on this on True Social at the time, but it was also something that I was thinking of. There is something called...
They were murdered.
Oh, for sure. But even the name of the ship and everything, when we're in an info war, we always think there's potential comms being sent back and forth. If you want to share my screen here. Dude, so it made me think of a Bayesian equation.
The co-owner of that company got hit by a car 2 days before.
Oh, really?
So both the two owners who just got out of a lawsuit with HP die within like 24 hours of each other. It's crazy.
Yeah, and there's got to be more to it. And I don't know if Chris dug any more on this, but this is one thing I thought of. So the ship was named. Oh, my computer froze. Okay, am I here? The ship was named the Bayesian. So a Bayesian inference is a method of statistical inference in which Bayes' theorem is used to update the probability for a hypothesis as more evidence or information becomes available. Fundamentally, Bayesian inference uses prior knowledge in the form of a prior distribution in order to estimate posterior probabilities. So it's like this big statistical thing. I just remembered that term.
All of this on Monday.
Did you?
Oh. Like this entire thing, the definition, the stats, the entire thing was Monday's Baseless Conspiracy episode. So instead of Burning Bright going through it now, just go watch that episode. I want to play this quick 20-second clip of Kellogg because it's actually not just the one of the Space Force flag unfurling thing. It's another one 3 weeks later where he says another thing about Kellogg. So check this out.
General, come on over here. General Kellogg's been fantastic, done a great job. He's working on a special project now, aren't you? I am, sure. Very special project. Okay.
I see General Kellogg. He's one of our great generals. He's done a fantastic job for me, and he's doing some very important things for me right now. So, General, thank you very much. Really fantastic job.
Been like a couple weeks of each other. So,
yep.
Notable.
I mean, it's real. It's all real. But what's most encouraging is him coming back into the Trump speech now. Yeah. Trump doesn't highlight him. Trump doesn't highlight people like that to give them credit on TV cameras. He highlights them. I don't even think they're talking to us, Anons and the MAGA community. I think that that's called we do a little trolling. Those are the warning shots to the deep state of saying, like, did you fuckers forget that? That's how I always read that stuff. Like, why Kellogg doesn't need credit publicly, right? If he's part of the most complex psychological military operation of all time, he doesn't need or probably even want public credit while those things are going on. So I think when those things are said, they're like flares out to the deep state. We've still got you. So it
and
probably
it's
makes
like
them
signal
panic
to
and do
us
stupid
too.
stuff.
I think a little bit of reminder because it's notable stuff, man.
Yeah. CADCAT 2020, $17. The Devolution connection was just incredible. Not only did it confirm Q's legitimacy, it was sheer joy to see BB and JH realize the significance of Kellogg's transcript. Just the fuel I needed to stoke my fire. Thanks, guys. Love all of you Badlanders. It was cool, man. Almost like John's a Fed. Doesn't even know it. That's my new working theory. If I told you.
I literally almost skipped over that part too. I just like mentioned it in passing and you guys freaked out. So that was pretty fun. But anyway.
An unwitting Fed, I think.
Yeah.
Mama Jan, $20. Adore the show. Don't always understand the acronyms you use. Kayfabe? But I'll figure them out eventually. I pray for your continued success. God bless.
Thank you.
Kayfabe is not an acronym, actually, but it's a term from World Wrestling that implies a false feud between two actors to generate interest from the audience. Donald Trump is a massive fan of pro wrestling and the UFC, where kayfabe is used most often.
Military deception as well.
Yep. Star Spangled Steffi sent $5 over. Did you guys hear RFK Jr. on the recent Tucker interview answer Tucker's question on how to break through to people stuck in the fake narrative? He said the only way is through the Socratic method. Yeah. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, not only is devolution coming like being talked about more, but people have like I've seen more people mention Socratic method now.
Yep.
Like it just in the past week than I think I have ever before. I mean, I guess it's all about
weird.
RFK, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think that when you even say they're sending us signals, like in the truth community, it can sound stupid, like, or it can sound, people are like, no, there's no way they would, why would they do that? But I sort of think that they keep an eye on what people are talking about, and they use that to sort of measure where they're at, where the rest of the public mind is at.
Yeah.
So if they see this community talking about that,
feedback loop.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's encouraging. And then one more, PJW, $50 for you. Oops, that's a Badlands Daily one. I'm not reading that.
How dare you?
I typed in Wednesday. So yeah, we're good.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been fun. Sorry it's a little shorter than most people are used to, but that is. I was just gonna make a joke about you. I was like, anytime Burning Bright's involved, that's kind of the result you're gonna get. But anyway, man, yeah, we'll see you Friday, Liberty Down, Saturday, Power Hour again. I'll be back home by then. But I'm gonna close out the show with the video pinned to my Twitter page because it's been getting a lot of action again recently, and I just want to remind y'all it's there. Go check it out and share it around. Yeah. And yeah, get your Field of Greens. Big sale. Don't forget. But good show, man.
All right. It was fun.
Oh, let me try to get this up.
Now this is super awkward.
Okay, here we go. Now we're good. Okay, bye.
Oh, but I don't want the results, right?
There's a flurry of moves. at the Department of Defense, which Rachel Maddow on TV, like,
Kind of a weird reaction to losing the election, right? Immediately fire the defense secretary and install a new guy.
What should happen is what the plan that we're on now, and I think a plan that's going to make people very, very happy.
What do they think the NSA and the CIA can do if they were suddenly commandeered by Trump lackeys?
We have some very good controls in place. And they're going to get 3 more years. They rig an election, they're going to get another 3 more years.
Trump was making tons of moves in irregular warfare, specifically having to do with irregular warfare. And then just like a couple months ago, he comes out and openly admits that the last 7 years, our intel agencies have been conducting
illegal psychological warfare campaigns against the American people. I'm a wartime president. This is a war. This is a war, different kind of a war than we've ever had.
Chris Miller, like, cut the red tape for Ezra Cohen-Watnick, the head of special operations, to report directly to Christopher Miller, the Secretary of Defense.
They think it's a trick that I'm playing on them. They think I'm playing a trick.
On December 7th, when Donald Trump issued the executive order which implemented and executed a continuity of government plan.
They cheated, and it's a shame that they're allowed to get away. And let's see whether or not they do get away, because I don't think they will get away with it.
Chris Miller, who's been the Secretary of Defense for like a month and 5 days or something, says we've been through some of the most
complex military operations this country's ever conducted.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, you know, when you rob the store of its diamonds, I always say Tiffany, and you rob Tiffany of its diamonds and you get caught, you're supposed to return them. So we caught them cheating. You're going to let somebody that cheated stay for 3 more years? I can't imagine it.
Donald Trump issued 10 national security presidential memorandums in his last 10 days in office. Those specifically deal with national security matters. He issued one every 53.7 days leading up to that point, and he issued 10 in his last 10 days. And some of them are still classified. We have no idea what they are.
If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president. But when you're beating the so-called, I say so-called president of the United States, when you're beating him by so much.
2 days before Trump left office, the continuity of government protocol, like the warning system, was sent out to thousands of government employees. And everybody's like, what the hell is going on?
I don't want the results of this second term. This second term is a disaster for this country.